Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Champions of Inspiration. I'm your host, Scott Schilling. We're going to have a fun show coming all the way from the Middle East today. We've got a master coach, a consultant, a speaker, founder of Influencer Me. Just so much to talk about. Joe Hawkins, thanks for joining us on Champions of Inspiration.
Oh, Scott, it's such a joy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, you've had some unique life experiences, to say the least. In fact, I want to set a little bit of foundation just to show uh, how important perseverance is and everything. You at one time had a diagnosis on your hand that said, we might have to take it off. Now, I'm sure that wasn't what you wanted to hear, nor did you allow it to happen. So share a little bit about that with everybody.
Yes, I was first year nursing, just out of school, and had a car accident, fractured my hand, my right hand, and had to have an operation to resuture the knuckle back on. And with that, about 5 days later, I had such terrible shooting pains and freezing hand. And they took the cast off and noticed that my hand was going gangrenous. I had no blood supply to it. And after much physiotherapy and TENS machines shocking it and whatnot, they told me they were going to have to amputate first at the wrist and then at the elbow and then eventually at the shoulder. So this was my right hand and I was 17 years old.
That doesn't sound like something that you want to experience at any time, whether you're 17 or not. So how did you work away from, them wanting to potentially take your hand and wrist and arm and everything to where you are today?
Scott, I had the most incredible mother who had taught me to use my brain very differently. And she had always taught me that we have the most incredible brains and that we can make all sorts of things a reality. And I just held on to that. I'd had many diagnoses in my past that hadn't come as the doctors had foretold, because my mum had always told me there would be other ways if I was open to them. And I just believed that this wasn't going to be my fate. And I knew that I had the best doctors in the land, because as a nurse, you always get given the best. So I completely respected their opinion, but I believed there would be another way. And with that, as time opened up, my mum went into a chiropractor and he said, "How's the family?" And she said, "Oh, Joe's got this terrible thing with her arm." And he said, "I want to see her immediately." And after a manipulation, first of all, he x-rayed and showed that I had whiplash, as simple as that. And it was pinching the sympathetic nerve down my back that led to my arm. And so the sympathetic nerve cuts off all the blood supply. And so my hand was dying. It was like a claw. In fact, my sister's boyfriend, he was a real charmer, and he volunteered to be my manager for horror movies, And so within a couple of hours of having my neck manipulated, I could move my hand again, and it was incredible. It was warm, and that was amazing. Yeah.
Well, again, it goes to show the only thing that heals the body is the power that built the body. And one of the things we want to do with Champions of Inspiration is obviously share stories that are either undertold or untold, to let people know that there are different ways. So obviously that worked very well. Your body healed. You didn't lose a hand, so that was pretty awesome. So how did that set you on your path to where you are today, from a fitness side and from a coaching side and everything that you're doing today?
Scott, I just always believed that, we have such incredible access to health and to well-being. So I just don't accept these bad diagnoses like other people do. I just always search for other ways, for new methods, for new realities. and ways of thinking and looking at life and applying various scientific modalities so that we can have different results.
And so now you've got, and have had for years, but now you've developed a program called Hello Gorgeous. What's that all about?
Yes. Oh, it's actually interesting that you've gone back to the hand, because while I was living in Mozambique, which is a very remote area, it was about an 18-hour drive to the closest chiropractor, and I would still need to have adjustments with my neck. And it was just impossible to get there. And I met an incredible Pilates teacher who started my Hello Gorgeous journey. And I developed my neck muscles and my posture to sustain alignment. And so that was one of the first stages. And then my husband at the time had been told that he needed to be on blood pressure pills, statins for cholesterol, and insulin. And he negotiated with the doctor and said, will you give me 1 month? And then I'll come back to you. And if my readings are still out, I will obey you. But give me 1 month. So he came home, and obviously I've got the nursing background, and I just went on a huge learning curve to pull this right, and learned about insulin gaps and all sorts of things. And within a month, his readings were all perfect. So that was very exciting. So that was the start of my Hello Gorgeous, Hello Handsome, and Hello Metabolism, which is the first phase of what I generally call Hello Gorgeous. And it's just life-changing. It's amazing. People today are not given the truth about their health or their weight. And we're given means that just are a revolving door. They don't work, and they don't work long term. And whatever people lose, they seem to just gain a whole bunch more on the back end.
Right.
And it's nearly impossible to sustain. So that is the biggest thing, the biggest lie in the industry.
So let everybody in on a little bit of the process and what you're doing to help so many today.
So Scott, first of all, it's understanding that we are a whole being, that it's our body, mind, and soul. And it takes the physical side, as you exercise and use every single range of movements, it tells our subconscious that you're healthy. So I use transformation neuroscience with Pilates, and I do body sculpting Pilates, because I really believe that the real human shape is your perfection. That men are supposed to look like men and women are supposed to look like women, and most exercise routines out there make women look like men, and there's a problem with that. And so it's bringing back the whole person, understanding the psychology. If you're looking at eating something and you're saying to yourself, oh my gosh, this is going to land on my hips. Well, guess what it does? It lands on your hips. So it's about really loving those parts of you that you would like to reject. Every woman, when she walks past a window or a mirror, she seems to criticize herself and condemn her curves. And this actually puts us into resistance. Instead, we should have unconditional love and compassion towards ourselves, which allows those unwanted parts to go and allows the fat tissue to reshape. So I do a combination of amazing nutrition, mindset, which I call Think and Grow Thin, or Love Yourself Lean, and then all of the Pilates. So, and then we've got the base, which is Hello Metabolism, just getting a person back to really good nutritional status and balancing their blood sugar and all of that. And then the next phase are for those people who have particular health issues. And I lead them through understanding with their signs and symptoms which foods are triggering what response and how to manage that. And there are times when they'll be able to eat it and times when they may not. So I lead them through so that we're reducing all the inflammation, all the autoimmune disease, and giving people back their incredible health, which when I left South Africa, Scott, about 5 years ago, I had put on a lot of inflammation. I'd been going through a very stressful time. And I had arthritis in my fingers. I was in my mid-40s, had adult acne all my life, and irritable bowel, autoimmune disease, all sorts of things. And then I realized that I had gluten intolerance. And this led me on a whole thing of looking at all the different food intolerances, the way they're treating our food. I don't know if you know, but there's, at the moment, much of our food is what they call anti-nutritious, which means it's not just an empty nutrition, it's actually robbing our bodies of nutrition.
Wow.
So by eating what we think looks like a good and healthy meal, our bodies are being stripped of vitamins and minerals. And as a consequence, we then get imbalanced hormones and autoimmune disease. So that means our body is actually killing itself. So we're fighting ourselves, our own cells. And it was learning how to change my eating so that I regained my health, my weight just fell away. And ages too, I've really found, I mean, I'm 50 and I got into trouble coming back from Mexico because they said my passport said I was 50, but I only looked 35. So there must be some foul play. So that was rather entertaining.
So how do you get back on the path to this better metabolism and eating the right things? What's your process to help people find that path again?
So first of all, Scott, if people just book a starter with me, which will be 4 sessions, they'll get on a good start. I'll give them the recipe for the Hello Metabolism, teach them the new mindset and thinking that goes into it, and ways of preparing food that is just different and delicious. And nobody feels like they're deprived. They feel like they are satisfied and enjoying their meals. They're never hungry. And then, because this is the worst thing people do to themselves, they fast, or they really deprive themselves, eating salads all the time, and their body goes into storage mode. It believes that they are starving, and as a consequence, it hoards fat instead of allows it to release. So I get them to a place where they allow their body to release, and they're starting to think healthier about themselves. And then for those who've got, I'll do an assessment on them. And then for those who need to go to the next phase of Hello Gorgeous, if they've got massive health issues and inflammation, then I help to reduce all of that and guide them on a path which may be longer than the 4 weeks if that's their case.
How can you tell the difference between inflammation, or can you tell the difference between inflammation and just a simple weight gain, something like that?
So here, I love your question. So here's the thing. We know that anybody who is overweight is stressed. Their body is stressed. You produce fat cells actually will produce more cortisone and estrogen, the female hormone. So it puts our body in a very strange place. It also blocks our insulin receptors on our cells. So when a cell needs energy, it feels very tired if the fat cell is pushing against the insulin receptors. So this is one of the big problems with insulin resistance. And everybody who's, about 5 to 8 kgs, which is what in pounds, about 10 pounds plus,
Right.
10 pounds or more, they will be insulin resistant because their fat cells are pushing too heavily on the insulin receptors. So our body goes into what we call the sympathetic nervous system response, which is, remember with my hand, it was the sympathetic nerve. It's very interesting. Whereas our bodies thrive with parasympathetic nervous system stimulant. And parasympathetic is rest and digest. You feel more rested, you feel wonderful, you're sleeping well, you're metabolizing well, you are in a happy place with your hormones. Whereas when you're in the sympathetic nervous system, it's very stressful. It's, your nights are not so good. You feel tired, you feel strained. And the cortisol, which is very fattening on itself, the fat cells produce it, and it fattens on its own. So it's one of those catch-22s. So it's really getting people back to a place where they're in the parasympathetic nervous system.
Is that a fairly easy process, or is it just take some time, or is it take a combination of both?
Yes, absolutely. A combination of both. Most of all, people are in a rut. We're in bad habits of thinking, bad habits of eating. And as a consequence, we are on this go, 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 go mentality where our bodies are just not getting a break. The world is so stressed out there that we are more inclined to be sympathetic nervous system at the moment, especially with the pandemic, you know?
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. I would think with the stress of the pandemic and the uncertainty that exists, does that kind of foster that cortisol release and that extra stress?
Absolutely, absolutely. And also the fact that people have been more bound to their chairs or their computers. They're not moving as much. Movement is very good for our parasympathetic nervous system. But I mean, saying that, there are a lot of exercises that people do trying to lose weight, and they put themselves more into the sympathetic nervous system because the exercises are very stressful on their bodies. So it's a very fascinating study, and it's just getting people to come right. It's a very individual approach because each of us has got our own little patterns where we are sabotaging ourselves. So it's bringing us back. You know, if the whole world has been out and all of the dieting news out there is false, we are really having to reprogram our subconscious and allow our body, mind, and soul to come back to a place of health.
What are some of the little sabotages that people throw at themselves?
So one of it is this whole fasting, not eating properly, skipping meals or having salads, having light meals at night. That's the worst thing you can do if you're not sleeping properly. If you haven't got enough blood sugar to last the night, you are going to have very bad hormones in the morning, which will crave sweet things. You will also be more likely to want to eat 30% more than you would normally eat. So these are the little things. Also carbs. If we eat high carb foods, we are more likely to crave 30% more and something sweet at the end of the meal. So when they bring you bread, when you go to a restaurant, choose a peanut instead, or a little meat snack. Don't go for the bread first. If you go for something else first, it can make a massive difference. So it changes your whole brain chemistry. So it's really learning that there are these clever little tips and tricks that make life easier. You can still enjoy these things, but know how to balance it and your health.
So it's really an eating education to a
Yes.
certain extent of learning these tips, techniques, strategies that get you out of creating your own binging.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. And also your mindset, you know, because we've been programmed to believe a whole bunch of things that are just not the truth. And then we've got foods that are anti-nutritious, which are stripping us of what our bodies need to be healthy. So our autoimmune system goes out, our nutrition is all imbalanced, and we find that we end up in this huge cycle where we're on a whole lot of over-the-counter meds or prescription meds. And really and truly, if we just bring our eating and our mindset and our movement right, we can bring it all right and regain. I mean, I just cannot believe the difference between my life now and how it was in the past. I had health issues all my life I was seeing doctors for. And really and truly, all it was getting my diet and my metabolism right, my getting rid of the anti-nutrients and allowing my body to really be its healthy natural self.
I've never heard of the anti-nutrients before. What are there some common foods that people wouldn't
Yes.
realize that this is what's happening?
Absolutely. To tell you the truth, they're mostly the GMO foods. They've totally messed with our gut biome. They're causing a leaky gut, which means that the food, instead of being digested within the gut, with gastric enzymes and all the rest of it, it is now leaking through and passing into the bloodstream without being digested first. And as a consequence, we're now intolerant to a lot of different foods that we wouldn't be if there wasn't such a thing as GMO.
So I know the foods that I know of that way would be wheat, to strengthen them so that they can stand up tall. So they've been genetically modified so they can pick them easier, except there's no nutrition in them once they do. Soybeans. What other kinds of foods would fit into that category?
So we know when we look at our kids, we know that nuts are one of them, right? Because nobody used to be intolerant to nuts, and now suddenly all the kids can't have it at school. We've got obviously, so our three biggest ones would be gluten. And gluten, actually, they've designed gluten at the moment. They've 10x the gluten factor of gluten. And what that's doing is it's stimulating our opiate receptors in our brain. And so the same as if you've had opium.
Wow. That doesn't sound good.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it makes the world feel like and they don't actually care what's going on because they've half cut. They've got a whole dose of drugs. So this is what we would call our comfort foods, right? And then the next big one actually is lactose. 78% of the world are intolerant to lactose and they don't know it.
Wow. That's huge.
Huge. And then eggs. I absolutely adored eggs and they're really no good for me. So it's finding out what each person is reacting to and then how to manage it best, how to substitute, and then when to reintroduce and see how you go. In certain countries, I can eat certain foods more than in others. It really does depend on where you are and on your body.
So how do you work with people to find out what their particular allergens must be or the things that trigger their bodies?
So first of all, being a nurse has been the most incredible thing for me. And then my mum had taught me so much about really tuning into our bodies and listening to what your body's saying and doing and needing. And so because of that, I've become incredibly attuned to what's going on. And if something changes in my body, I can see it like that and take it back to what I've just eaten. And then test. So because of that, I've had about 5 years of testing on myself and on others and getting the recipes right. So I would pull people off if they're needing the next phase of Hello Gorgeous, if they don't just need the metabolism and blood sugar regulation and all of that, then I would pull them off a bunch of different things, teach them how to cook them differently, and for 3 weeks, and then reintroduce slowly and watch those signs and symptoms, track everything. And I will pick up before other people do because I'm just very attuned to what is going on with foods, and then pulling them back and right and linking it, because I'll say to them, what did you have yesterday? And they'll often say, no, nothing different. And I'll go, yes, you did. Your body's doing something different. Let's look at what it was. And we find those little things that they had forgotten they even had or tried or did, and then we're able to give incredible knowledge about their bodies and about the foods that are creating havoc in their health and their weight.
So you said earlier that as you changed, what you were consuming and that weight just fell off. It wasn't like a purposeful attempt to lose weight, quote unquote. It was the right things happened. So the body just started to shed weight. Is that consistent with everybody?
Yes. And that's because, I love your questions. They're really insightful. Because we're reducing the cortisol, we're taking people into parasympathetic nervous system response. Their body is no longer inflamed. It's no longer acidic, because cortisol and sympathetic nervous system is highly acidic. And it's just a very stressful state. So when we take them out of that, give them new ways of thinking and eating and responding, getting their sleep right, getting their vitamin D levels right, all these little things change our hormonal balance, and then our body can be healthy naturally.
I mean, that sounds pretty ideal. It sounds like the best way to go about it without having to kind of force yourself into something that, whether it be depriving yourself of something or anything like that, rather put the right things in and let it just happen.
Yes. And the other thing that I've discovered is that people beat themselves up or think that they soothe themselves by having something that is perhaps really harming them. And so once they see, and change the meaning, we know that when you change the meaning, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And when you realize, I can either have adult acne all my life, or I can have an incredible figure, look 15 years younger, and no acne. Which is it going to be? It's actually quite easy to choose then,
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's not hard after that.
So how do people get a hold of you to work with you to learn this and to get on this Hello Gorgeous program?
Scott, the best way at the moment is to get me on my Facebook. I'm most active there, and I love the personal touch. So if they send me a message, I'll get them hooked up with that. And then obviously there is no ways I'm going to be able to help every single person on the planet, which I'm longing to do. So I would also be certifying my own Hello Gorgeous coaches so that they can run Hello Gorgeous clinics and practices and extend the reach of this incredible work and give people back their lives.
Sounds like a great way of doing it, for sure. So simply Joe Hawkins on Facebook.
Absolutely.
J-O as in Joe.
Yes, Joe Hawkins. And if you want to find my page, because there are a lot of Joe Hawkins, it might be easier to find my page, and that's Joe Hawkins Official.
Got it. Well, that's great. How about one little last little bit of wisdom for everybody before we sign off?
Oh, I want to just tell everybody, this is, many people feel ashamed of where their weight is. They feel humiliated, and they have a lot of self-condemnation. And I just want everybody to know that this is not your fault. This is a mass program of ill health and misinformation. Please don't beat yourself up anymore. You just are worth so much, and you were not told the truth. So I want everybody to know that health is at your fingertips, that your ideal weight and your ideal self is at your fingertips. The transformation takes body, mind, and soul, and it's worth every drop of the journey. And when you radiate, when you become beautiful from the inside out, there's a magic that happens, and you will really be astounded at who you become.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us here on Champions of Inspiration. I know you provided a ton of inspiration for so many people. And thank you all for joining us. We'll see you again at the next event. God bless.
Thank you, Scott.